Okay, our next panel is going to be discussing transportation infrastructure performance as it relates to sustainability. And I know we heard some definitions on sustainability from Secretary Prasad this morning. One of the ones I use comes from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. And the definition for sustainability in development, or sustainable development, is meeting the development needs of today without compromising the resources of future generations to meet their needs in terms of economic, environmental, and social perspectives. And so we're going to hopefully focus on how performance relates to that definition of sustainability. And I went a little bit farther. I contacted the FHWA Long-Term Pavement Performance Office and asked them, said, would you please give me an official definition of performance in terms of for pavements? And the email I got back is, there is no official definition of pavement performance offered by FHWA or the LTPP. However, they did refer me to a paper written by Professor Robert Litton from Texas A&M University, in which he defines performance as a general term for how pavements change their condition or serve their intended function with accumulating use, and the definition can change between project level and network level. So that's what I have as a backdrop for our discussion today. I have four very distinguished guests. I have from the public sector, Alfred Lurigados, who is the Deputy Executive Director and Director of Engineering for Miami-Dade Expressway Authority. 5-year work program valued at over $800 million. And Alfred received his Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Florida International University. From the private sector, from a user perspective, we have Mr. Frank Power. He is president of CCC Transportation, limited liability company here in Florida. They are one of the Southeast's largest dry bulk and van haulers with terminals throughout the region. And they are a part of Comcar Industries, one of the nation's largest truckload transportation carriers. Mr. Power received his Bachelor's of Science in Chemical Engineering from University of South Florida. Also with us today from an academic perspective is Dr. James Willis. He's an assistant research professor at Auburn University and the National Center for Asphalt Technology. He's a member of the Federal Highway Administration's Sustainable Pavements Technical Working Group, and he received his PhD from Auburn University. And our fourth panelist is also an academic, Dr. Franz Ohm. He is the George Macomber Professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He is Director of the Concrete Sustainability Hub at MIT, and he received his PhD from École Nationale des Ponts et Chaussées. Just a joke between us because I'm Cajun, right? So I just had to do it. And so first up, I'd like to ask Mr. Lurigados to address us. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Alfred Lurigados. I'm the Deputy Executive Director at the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority, and it's great to be here to address all of you. It's been an interesting morning and topics to hear the Secretary and his ideas. He actually talked about some of the things that I wanted to mention. And in doing so, it made me think about, okay, let's take a step back and what is sustainability? I heard somebody tell me earlier about it's a buzzword. It's something that we're talking about a lot, and we don't really put criteria and performance metrics in our selections when it comes to, for example, design-build jobs or anything. So I wanted to take a step in that direction. And what I put before you here is what I see as a sustainable roadway. And what do I have in front of you here? And I apologize, it's a little small for some of you to see. It is the Don Shula Expressway south of Palmetto all the way to Florida's Turnpike. And what's sustainable about this road? Well, besides the fact that we feel it looks aesthetically pleasing, it has landscaping, it has features that are going to be there for generations and generations and deal with drainage and deal with all the highway sides of it, it has a toll collection point, and that's what we do. We collect tolls at MDX, and we have the economic side. We do generate our own money. That's one of the things that we've talked about here is financially, what are some of the biggest issues facing all of us and dealing with some of the topics we're discussing is money. We do generate our own revenues, and we bond that money and leverage it to become our $800 million work program that we have now. And we partner with Florida DOT, Secretary Pego and his staff. We're most of MDX's money. In fact, 50% of our work program goes to fund DOT and MDX projects together, and that has created over $1.4 billion in projects that we've put into the ground or are putting into the ground currently. So that's something that we take pride in, and it's a sustainable program, a sustainable business model that we have to run our highways. And again, tolls aren't the most popular option, as we know, but nonetheless, it is something that is sustainable, is something that the user pays for what they use, and therefore this is the business model that MDX functions. Of course, tolls aren't the end-all solution for everything, but it is one of the solutions that we have for transportation here in South Florida, Orlando, Tampa, and other areas throughout the state. Somebody mentioned earlier about also what do we have with performance measures. MDX also falls under the purview of FTC, the Florida Transportation Commission, and we do have performance measures that we follow. Some of them are pavement, and I'll get into some of that as well as our bridge rating. But safety is one of the ones that is very important to me. Everybody always, engineers, all of us, and including contractors, talk about safety, and what does that mean to sustainability? Well, aren't lives sustainable? And 6 months ago, if you would have told me, Alfred, we have the best roads in Florida, I would say unequivocally, yes, I know we do. Alfred, we have the best and safest roads in the nation in Florida. Absolutely we do. Until I met a gentleman that came to see me and started talking a little bit more about sustainability and a little bit more about accidents and a little bit more about the real figures that are out there. If I told you that Florida has half the population of California, half the drivers of California, less vehicles than California, and half the mileage of roadways, but double the fatalities, what do you think? Well, I started looking into that a little bit more, and I started thinking, what's going on? As far as Texas is concerned as well. We have a third of the population of Texas. We have a third of the mileage in highways as Texas. And we have just over half of the fatalities that Texas has. So you look at the fatalities, and I'm going to put some numbers out there for you. In 2007, over 3,200 deaths in the state of Florida. California, 2,000. In 2008, 2,980 deaths in Florida. California, 1,600 deaths. In 2009, 2,560. In 2010, 2,444. And in 2011, 2,388 for Florida. I just mentioned to you over 13,500 deaths in the state of Florida alone in traffic accidents, when I thought we had the safest roads out there. And we are one of the top 3 states in the country when it comes to fatalities. We have I think about 3 of the top most dangerous roads based on statistics and fatalities in the country. And one of them is, unfortunately, I-95. That's where 762 deaths in one segment alone have happened between 2004 and 2008. I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but this is some of the realities that we're faced with in sustainability also, because I started looking at what happens in some of these fatalities. 30 to 40% of those are vehicle departure accidents from the roadway. Vehicles skidding off our roads that we design, that we put into effect, that leave the roadway, single occupant vehicles, and they cause fatals. Of course, the fallback reaction to me when this gentleman presented me with this information was, how many of those didn't have their seatbelts on? How many of those were going too fast? And it's easy for us as the engineers and easy for us as the people running the roadways to just fall back on the defense mechanisms, but like we always say, one death is too many. In fact, on 874, and right near where this photograph was taken, recently there was a young lady, 22 years old, in a Ford Escape, traveling probably 15 miles per hour too fast for a curve, lost control, spun out. She had her seatbelt on, and she kept on spinning on the grass and ended up hitting a tree, and she died. And it made us look at some of the things that we're talking about sustainability also with the safety. Is changing the way we talk about pavement design. Well, let's talk about departures. Let's talk about guardrail implementations. Let's talk about typical sections. Let's talk about the maintenance when it comes to some of these issues. We all want to put in beautiful landscaping. I know DOT's doing it, we're doing it, Turnpike's doing it, but we need to look at more sustainable designs when it comes to maintenance, more sustainable designs when it comes to safety. So I wanted to mention that was something that we've seen as just beyond the norm And I want to look at FICE, the Florida Institute of Consulting Engineers, and talk about this at the upcoming design conferences. Why do we have to have the most fatals? I don't want to live in a state that's happening. And in fact, I will say this, the 13,500 deaths that I told you about, one of those was my front door neighbor. Young guy, 28 years old at the time, died in a single vehicle accident in a Chevy Trailblazer that he flipped, and he didn't survive. So I happen to know one of those, and I'm sure some of you in the audience may know someone, or your friends know someone that this happened to. So it's a shame, but that guy had a family, that guy had a wife, that guy had parents, that guy had everybody, his whole life ahead of him. And look what happened to him. Well, I'll get into some of the issues that also we want to talk about as far as performance. Related to serviceability index, we follow exactly what FDOT does, which is cracking, roughness on pavement, rutting. I've now been at MDX almost 10 years, and I'm beginning to see projects that I put into implementation in 2004, 2005 that we paved, that we said there's going to be a 15-year service life on this asphalt, that I'm already programming monies in to resurface again. So is the pavement, bottom line, is the pavement design that yielding its expected service life for us? I can tell you in some of our areas the answer is no. The FC5 and certain courses are not meeting service life. We also have learned lessons on toll sections of highway. When you cut in loops related to the pavement itself, the asphalt is rutting as well there. So the life cycle is one issue that we're seeing a real big issue on, and it's something that I want to address going forward and something that we definitely need to have a point of discussion on. Pavement vehicle interactions, it's something also safety. Surface friction, we don't ever measure surface friction in the wet. And is it something we should measure, and how do we do it? Because now you're getting into the bald tires versus good tires on wet pavement, and it, again, creates a little bit of a debate, but nonetheless, wet pavement conditions is something that we constantly deal with. And if we're designing a roadway for the worst conditions, why not design for worst conditions on a slope with certain cross-section in the wet? And again, concrete versus asphalt, and something we feel as a toll road, we should provide you a higher value. If you're paying for the roadway, shouldn't you get a better use of it? And again, concrete sections of roadway is something we're starting to evaluate as far as less, having to repave less, having to do less work on roads. We need to balance a little more with concrete versus asphalt pavement. And last but not least, I do want to talk about ITS. I do feel sustainability-wise, for the future of all of us, I hope all of you in the room, every time you go to take a trip that's longer than 15 minutes or your typical daily commute, that you go on 511 or you check some sort of traffic route system to plan your trip. And that eventually you start planning your trip, whether using transit or using your car. So I know I do. I get into my car and I plan my trip, whether there's traffic, and you check traffic conditions and you make a proper decision. Sustainability for your creature habits, I think, is important for us to also push as agencies and as commuters every day. I look forward to the discussion and look forward to talking to you about specifics on when it comes to design build criteria, selection processes. Again, it's something that we, as an evaluator, I sit on technical evaluation committees a lot of times. We don't ever put sustainability as a selection measure related to points scored on a proposal for you guys as design builders and designers. So again, I look forward to the discussion and continued debate.